Have you ever met someone so entitled that they thought the rules didn't apply to them? Well, a few years ago, I met one of those people at 30,000 feet, and what happened during that flight is something I'll never forget. By the end of this story, you'll see why being rude to the wrong person can turn a comfortable flight into a very long nightmare. Back in the early 2000s, I traveled constantly for work. I practically lived in airports, and because I spent so much time on planes, I always booked the same seat whenever possible, an aisle seat. If you've ever flown for hours at a time, you know why. It gives you a little extra room, easier access to the restroom, and you don't have to climb over strangers. One afternoon, I boarded a flight that was scheduled to last about 3.5 hours. I found my seat, put my bag under the seat in front of me, buckled up and settled in. Everything seemed normal until a very large man arrived and stopped beside my row. He looked at me and immediately frowned. "In my seat," he said. I checked my boarding pass. "No, I'm not. This is my assigned seat." He sighed dramatically and rolled his eyes. "My company's travel department messed up. They gave me the middle seat. I need the aisle seat, so you'll have to switch." Notice he didn't ask, he didn't say please, he didn't even pretend to be polite, he simply expected me to move. Now here's the thing. If he had approached me respectfully, I probably would have switched without hesitation. He was a big guy, and I could understand why an aisle seat would be more comfortable for him, but his attitude immediately rubbed me the wrong way. Before I could even respond, he planted himself in the aisle, blocking everyone behind him. Passengers were piling up. People were getting annoyed. The pressure was obvious. Finally, not wanting to delay the boarding process, I agreed and moved into the middle seat. The moment I stood up, he dropped into the aisle seat like a king claiming his throne. Then came the part that changed everything. He turned toward the passengers waiting behind him and loudly announced, "Sorry, everyone. Had to wait for this lady to move out of my seat." His seat, I froze. Several people looked at me. A few even gave me dirty looks, as if I had been the problem. My face burned with embarrassment. I had done him a favor, and he repaid me by making me look selfish and unreasonable. That's when I decided he was going to regret every minute of the next 3.5 hours. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't call a flight attendant. Instead, I smiled, and I waited. About 10 minutes after takeoff, I tapped him on the shoulder. "Excuse me, I need to get out." He looked annoyed but stood up. He gathered his belongings, folded his tray table, removed his seatbelt, stepped into the aisle and let me pass. I walked toward the back of the plane. I stood there for about 30 seconds, then I returned. "Thank you." He got up again. A few minutes later, he settled back into his seat, opened a magazine, started reading. 5 minutes passed. Tap. "Sorry, need to get out again." Look on his face was priceless, but he couldn't say no. After all, I was sitting in the middle seat. Exactly where he had wanted me. He stood up again. This continued for the entire flight. Every time he got comfortable, I suddenly needed something. When he opened a snack, I needed to get out. When the beverage cart arrived, I needed to get out. When he started watching a movie, I needed to get out. When he closed his eyes and tried to nap, I needed to get out. Each time required the same exhausting routine. Pick up belongings, fold tray, remove seatbelt, stand up, move aside, wait. Sit back down, repeat, over and over and over again. About halfway through the flight, I noticed other passengers starting to notice too. Some were trying not to laugh, others were openly smiling. One man across the aisle nearly choked on his drink watching the giant passenger stand up for what felt like the 20th time. Meanwhile, my neighbor's attitude was completely gone. The confident arrogance from boarding had disappeared. Now he looked defeated. Every time I touched his shoulder, his eyes widened with disbelief. As if he couldn't understand why this was happening to him. The funniest moment came about 2 hours into the flight. He had finally managed to fall asleep. His mouth was hanging open, his head was tilted back, he looked completely exhausted. I waited a few minutes, then gently tapped his shoulder. "Sorry, need to get out." His eyes snapped open. The entire row across from us burst out laughing. I had to bite my lip to keep from smiling. For the rest of the flight, he barely spoke. The closer we got to landing, the more miserable he looked. When the captain finally announced our descent, I could practically see the relief on his face. The nightmare was almost over. As the plane landed and passengers began gathering their bags, he stood up and turned toward me. For a second, I thought he was going to complain. Instead, he just stared. Then he shook his head and walked away without saying a word. I never saw him again. But I guarantee he remembered me. And maybe, just maybe, the next time he wanted a favor from a stranger, he learned the importance of asking nicely. Because here's the truth. People are usually willing to help. Most of us want to be kind. But kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. And if you treat someone with disrespect after they've done you a favor, don't be surprised when karma decides to sit right next to you for the entire flight. If you enjoyed this revenge story and want more satisfying tales of entitled people getting exactly what they deserve, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in this situation?